Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating explainer based on a specific discourse that was actually delivered back on June 16, 1991. We're going to be looking closely at Chapter 8 of our source material, which maps out a deeply logical guide for navigating complex spiritual teachings. Honestly, whether you're studying philosophy or you're just curious about how to evaluate the absolute flood of information out there right now, this breakdown is going to give you some incredible tools to distinguish between what is genuinely true and what's just, well, a passing trend.
Because it's a highly relatable modern dilemma, isn't it? I mean, we live in an era that is literally flooded with countless spiritual booms, self-help gurus, and new religious groups. It can be super overwhelming. So how do you actually identify genuine teachings? How do you separate profound, life-altering truth from clever marketing or shallow trends? Well, today's source material, specifically a chapter titled What is True Dharma, offers a very rigorous, logical framework to evaluate these teachings impartially. It doesn't just ask you to take things on blind faith. Instead, it actually provides a practical checklist.
Okay, let's jump right into our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. What is true Dharma? 2. The 3 proofs. 3. Self-responsibility. 4. The 3 mindsets of a practitioner. And 5. The 3 treasures.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, What is True Dharma?
So, according to the text, true Dharma is defined as a genuine teaching flowing directly from a divine source. But the absolutely crucial distinction here, it is not just a mere societal boom or some passing fad. It is a universal truth that's proven through active practice. The source insists that if a teaching is actually real, its laws are going to manifest practically in your life. It's not abstract theory up in the clouds, it's something you literally live, breathe, and realize in your everyday personal development.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 proofs.
Now, what's really interesting about how the author approaches this is that the authentication process is broken down into 3 totally distinct, non-negotiable proofs. The core argument here is that you simply cannot rely on good feelings or a leader's charisma. To be valid, a genuine teaching has to pass this really rigorous 3-part test.
Let's unpack exactly what these 3 proofs are. First up, we've got documentary proof. This basically means there have to be written laws and texts that clearly explain scientific and karmic cause and effect. It needs to be recorded and consistent. Secondly, there's theoretical proof. The teaching absolutely must offer logical, rational explanations of the mind's laws and spiritual phenomena. It can't just be irrational nonsense. And third, and this might be the most important one, is actual proof. This is your real-world evidence. Does following this teaching actually lead to a positive transformation in your life? The text heavily emphasizes that all 3 of these, documentary, theoretical, and actual, have to be present to validate a religion.
Which brings us to Section 3, Self-Responsibility in Religion.
This is where things get really stark. There is a massive contrast drawn between genuine and fake paths here. On one hand, you have true religion, which demands rigorous self-reflection, sincere repentance, and absolute self-responsibility for your own mind and actions. It is hard work for sure. On the other hand, you have false religion. This is described in the text as offering sweet bait, teachings that rely entirely on blind faith, promising these super easy external fixes or miracles without requiring any personal effort or moral correction from the follower whatsoever.
The message here is completely uncompromising. True religion is not about going to a spiritual leader to ask for worldly favors or a quick fix. Not at all. It demands the everyday, roll-up-your-sleeves work of clearing your own karma. It requires looking at your mistakes, taking total ownership, and actively correcting your own mind. If a path lets you avoid that responsibility, well, it fails the test.
Okay, let's shift gears and look at Section 4, the 3 mindsets of a practitioner. Let's see how this all builds, because the source material actually maps this out as a progressive journey for the practitioner's soul. It's not just a random collection of thoughts, it's a very deliberate 3-step architectural flow. Let's break down each one of these mindsets. Step 1 is seeking. The text equates this directly to bodhicitta, which is this ancient term used to describe the mind that actively seeks enlightenment. Think of it as that internal spark of curiosity. It's that fundamental desire for self-improvement and the initial willpower to devote yourself to finding the truth. Without this pure seeking mind, the journey can't even get off the starting block. You genuinely have to want to grow. Now we move to the second step, learning. But actually, scratch the idea of just reading a textbook and memorizing facts. The material describes learning as a literal leap of the soul.
It's a deeply active, transformative process. There is a profound point made here, stating that the strength of your seeking mind is actually determined by the strength of your love for the divine or the truth. Studying the teachings deeply and really incorporating them into your worldview causes a massive progression, a true leap in your spiritual maturity.
And the final step in this progressive sequence is proselytizing, or sharing the teachings. According to this breakdown, you can't just be a passive consumer of knowledge. You can't just seek and learn strictly for your own benefit. True practice culminates in the embodiment of love. And what that means is taking the light and the knowledge that you've gained and stepping up to become a teacher or a guide to others. It is an active act of returning that positive energy to the world and helping other people awaken.
And finally, that brings us to Section 5, our conclusion, the 3 treasures.
So, where does this all lead? Everything we've unpacked today, the proofs, the intense self-responsibility, the cycle of learning and sharing, it all points toward one final, ultimate destination, dedicating oneself to what is known as the 3 treasures. As outlined in the text, these are the Buddha, which represents the enlightened one or the source of the teachings, the Dharma, which is the universal truth and the teachings themselves, and the Sangha, the community of fellow believers and practitioners. Taking refuge in these 3 pillars is presented as the ultimate anchor for a truly genuine spiritual life.
Well, that wraps up our breakdown for today. But before you go, I want to leave you with a question to mull over. As you navigate today's massive sea of information, whether it's spiritual, philosophical, or honestly just everyday learning, do your own pursuits include that continuous cycle? Are you actively seeking, deeply learning, and then generously sharing that knowledge with others? It's a pretty powerful lens through which to view our own growth, right? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped clarify a deeply fascinating subject. Keep seeking, and I'll catch you in the next one.